Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Devil's Advocate podcast. I'm your host, Keane. We're here today to talk, obviously, this weekend's massive Manchester derby at Old Trafford. We're here to say there's a lot of topics here today to talk about. Obviously, I think, look, it's been a very, emotional week with the passing of Sir Bobby Charlton, which, look, we will talk about, obviously, tribute of Sir Bobby tonight and what he's done. But not only for this football club, but for English football in general. He's an iconic figure, and sadly, he has left us. Tonight, obviously, I have a full packed panel here this evening. So, to the right, me and joined by former Manchester United striker Phil Marsh. We also have then channel regulars Stu, Julio, and Nathan. So we've packed panel here tonight. Big game this weekend. Probably look our biggest game of the season so far. Probably going to show where we are as a football club, as a team, this season. So, look, this is where we've a lot to break down tonight. It's good that we have a big panel here tonight. First of all, but Phil, I'm going to come to you first, obviously, because with the sad passing of Sir Bobby Charlton, it was at our football club. He's provided us with a lot of memories on the pitch, but also a brilliant ambassador for the club off the pitch. He done so much for the club worldwide as well. Obviously, you would have been at the club when Bobby would have been working at the club. In terms of being that important figure, I know I've heard a lot of stories about him being in around the dressing room, win, lose, or draw. What was your kind of experience, with Sir Bobby at the club?
Yeah, obviously, really sad news this week. I think Bobby embodies everything really that Manchester United stands for. The career he had, the things he went through, and the way he sort of portrayed himself after he finished. And he's dedicated his life basically to the football club. For myself personally, I met Bobby a couple of times just in and around the training ground and at the Old Trafford. Sorry. He was always really kind, always had words of encouragement. As a young player coming through at the club, he always had, words of wisdom just to sort of help you and try and guide you in the right way. And as I say, it's a massive loss for football, not just for Manchester United. I think, you've seen with the tributes that have been given at Old Trafford this week, and, the way that people have spoken about him, not only in England but worldwide. I think he's somebody who is an icon in the game, just in terms of what he won, the tragedy at Munich, what he had to go through, and sort of come back, and obviously what he's done for Manchester United in terms of looking at the ambassador role that he did with the club. I think some of the younger players and obviously everybody who met him had never had a bad word to say about him. I think obviously that speaks volumes about what he was like as a person. And yeah, obviously really sad news this week for the club.
Yeah, it really is. I think, look, it's taken all of us back, really. I think obviously we knew that, he was unwell. But I think, when we found out last Saturday, it was, I know for myself, football kind of was secondary at that point. I think when the games were happening and everything else, I think, look, it was a time to kind of reflect on kind of what he's done for the club and what he's went through, and the fact that if you talk about Manchester United, he is Mr. Manchester United. When you talk about the Busby Babes, when you talk about what he went through, them 10 years later to go on and win the European Cup and help the rebuild of Manchester United after that tragic incident, I think it speaks. He speaks volumes in terms of, you want to see someone with a great mentality, a great outlook on life, and Bobby Charlton was that. And he will be sadly missed. And look, I think we can all agree that in times like this, football does become secondary. It's always about looking at your loved ones, obviously savouring every day you do have with them. So look, he will be missed, and look, hopefully as a football club and as fans, we can do him proud now this season, and obviously in future times as well. Stu, I want to come to you. Just we're obviously talking about, we're going to go into this weekend's game. Obviously, we had the 1-0 win over Copenhagen in the Champions League, which, look, in the end turned out to be a decent result, all things considered, with our situation in the Champions League. But Erik ten Hag today talked about a couple of players, obviously, in his press conference today. First of all, he talked about the form of Marcus Rashford. And most specifically, he said at the moment that Marcus Rashford is almost nearly undroppable despite his form. Do you maybe look is Erik ten Hag looking at Marcus Rashford as our player to deliver in big moments, rather than an overall performance? Because down the years we've had players like that. Despite maybe not delivering the best performance on the day, they'd always deliver. And when you look at Marcus Rashford's 30-goal season last year, is Erik ten Hag looking at Rashford as his guide, despite his struggles at the minute?
Yeah, probably. The interesting thing about football and teams as a whole is you have to always carry one or two players. Phil will tell you this from when he plays. You look around, there are one or two lazy players, but then click of a finger, the ball's in the back of the net, or he's delivered a cross that has delivered eventually a goal. And they're the most frustrating players to play with and to also watch as a supporter. But kind of, somewhere they will deliver. The problem for Rashford is he's not delivered enough. I kind of understand what Ten Hag's saying, but he kind of hasn't delivered enough. When you look at our squad as a whole, when you look at our players, we all know individually they're good footballers. You don't get to Manchester United or get to the elite level by not being a good footballer, but for whatever reason, they're just not putting it together. And I think Rashford is going through this period where he doesn't quite know what to do with Højlund yet. Højlund doesn't quite know what to do with Rashford yet. So Rashford's almost betwixt and between, what shall I do when I've got the ball? Now, if he goes back to his normal game, his natural game, and that's to actually penetrate the corner of the 18-yard box, he'll be more dangerous. But if you're talking to Phil, Phil's like, cross the fucking football, will you? I'm making these runs for you. I'm delivering myself where I should be, and you're not doing what I need you to do. So Phil will take that for maybe 2 games, maybe 3, before he has Rashford up the wall in the changing rooms by the throat saying, either deliver, mate. I'm going to speak to the gaffer. I'm going to try and get you, out the side, because that's how ruthless strikers are. Now, Rashford has got to deliver Sunday. I think he possibly will deliver Sunday. I think he does get up for those big games, but he's got to deliver moving forward. If he's going to deliver Sunday, he has to deliver moving forward, Keane. Kind of think your point's right. I've seen a couple of debates about it's quite poor from Ten Hag from a management point of view to kind of point this out and make this. I think it's quite a brave thing to say out in the public domain, the way that Ten Hag's being kind of viewed upon at the moment by a section of the fan base who are questioning whether or not he's elite enough to deal with the players. I think he is. I like it. I've always had gaffers that have been vocal, and quite frankly, you listen to what the boss says. Otherwise, you're in major quandaries, such as Sancho's providing. So, I don't mind it, Keane, if I'm being honest, mate. But I'm kind of old school. All the soft snowflakes today won't put up with it. They won't like it. They'll go hide and they'll go and cry in the corner. Well, in that case, stay there, mate, because I don't want you anywhere near the pitch with me. Because when the goings gets really, really tough, you want to look around and make sure that there's players out there that are going to dig you out, and they know you're going to dig them out. So for me, I like it. I ain't got a problem with it. But I think you're right, Keane. I think he is kind of saying, Rashford's my man. He's nailed his colours to the mast now. Rashford's got to deliver. Could be double psychology. Don't know, fella. Don't know.
I think it is a case of this. I think every manager kind of has their player who they kind of, I wouldn't say favourite, but though they know is their main man. I think if you look at how you mentioned a second ago about players digging teams out of a corner, I think Rashford done that on multiple occasions last season. Even when, I remember there was a couple of games last year I was at where he didn't have necessarily the best performance, but then all of a sudden, he'd score or he'd get an assist. And I think even this year, he's after getting a couple of assists for Højlund, and he's only scored one goal in the league all season against Arsenal. So you're right in terms of his relationship, I think, with Højlund. I think that's still developing. I think Højlund is still young as well. So I think that's going to take time in itself. And if you're looking at our wingers at the minute, Rashford's actually the only one providing for Highland because Anthony's providing nothing. Bruno, surprisingly, is providing nothing now. There's an argument whether he's a winger or not. We all know he's a number 10, and Ten Hag's playing him out there. That's a different debate for another day. But when you look at it, none of our wingers have been providing service. It's been unfortunate, I think, for Highland as well. If you mentioned that as well, just to kind of go on your point, I think it's very unfortunate for him that Reguilon and Luke Shaw have been out, because I think when you look at the Rashford kind of running into trouble, he's missing that overlapping fullback to take that extra player away so he can beat that one man or get the shot away or put a cross in. I think he's definitely missing that there as well. So I do think when you see the likes of Luke Shaw come back into the team, especially Highland and Rashford will both have more service. I just think right now, if I isolate last, let's say 7-8 games, I think the balance of the team hasn't been right, and I think that's down to injuries.
It's been rubbish.
Yeah, it's been tough. But Julio, I want to come to you on Casemiro, because obviously Ten Hag is saying it's going to be a race against time for Casemiro to get fit for Sunday. Obviously, our top goal scorer this season, just ahead of Scott McTominay, funnily enough. He's come clutch in moments this season, but he's had struggles surprisingly in the defensive side of the game. If he's not 100% this weekend, do you gamble with Casemiro this weekend? Because he's had struggles in a lot of games, and that's when he's at 100%. Can you read? I know it's nearly needs must, but do you think Ten Hag should gamble with Casemiro this weekend if he's only, let's say, 70 or 80% fit going into Sunday?
I mean, I think personally he should, because I think it's one of those games where if this was Casemiro at Real Madrid, Casemiro would be playing regardless. I think your big players step up in big games no matter how fit they are. We've seen it in many of the great teams in the past, whether it's United teams, whether it's other football clubs around the world. So I know obviously it's been an issue obviously this season with certain players, but I just think that in a game of this magnitude, given how pessimistic a lot of us can be going into the game, regardless of whether we were at our best or at our worst, it's a game which has a lot of meaning behind it. And you want your big players, your big names, your best players to play in it. Rashford and Bruno, for example, aren't in the best of form, but who else are you going to pick to start ahead of them? This is the kind of game that we could, for 89, 90 minutes, do nothing all game and suddenly sneak a 1-0 win. These are the kind of players you want in that kind of game. So I think Ten Hag will look at it, and I think he will come to the conclusion that he almost not has no choice, but given who or what Casemiro is in that dressing room on and off the pitch, he's going to play him regardless, whether it's 60% or 100% fit.
Yeah, I think look, the way I kind of look at it, I'm kind of 50-50 with this one. And usually I'd be decisive in this situation, but I can see when you look at his experience, I think that's something that we lack massively throughout the spine of our team right now. And yeah, you could say if it's the Casemiro that's at Real Madrid, you'd say, yeah, undisputedly thrown back in the team. But you look at how he's struggling this year. Is this the game you want? Because this game is going to be high intensity. Is this the game you want to throw him into straight away? I think I know I'll get Phil's take on this, because obviously he would have been at the club in these big magnitude games as well. But Nathan, would you, when you look at Casemiro this season, do you think the introduction of Sofian Amrabat could maybe help this kind of issue he's having in terms of getting exposed in transition? Because I think one thing we've seen is that obviously with the loss of Varane and Martinez and Shaw at different stages this season, Casemiro has had a big burden defensively. Do you think maybe bringing in Amrabat as an extra bit of protection for him, that maybe he can get through this bad period that he is having?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's always healthy in every position to have extra positions. So there's always that healthy competition between players. And having that little bit of backup when they're playing on the same pitch together is really, really important at the moment because of the injuries that we have had. Personally, I would go heart over head on this one. I would go for McTominay purely because of hopefully he's got that fight in him. He's trying to prove himself and he's really doing well at the minute. So fingers crossed he's going to take that form into this game and just, be a Man United player, if you know what I mean. Just go for it.
Yeah, look, to be fair, if you look at McTominay's big game record, especially against Man City, he's done well. So obviously, away at the Etihad, when we beat him 2-0 there, he played very well. Obviously, the iconic halfway line goal right before lockdown as well. Look, I think the thing about McTominay is maybe in the games when we're slightly more pragmatic, he can maybe just slot in there. I think obviously, he's better in the opposition box, just scoring goals. But he has shown that knack in a big game that he can do. He can display that work rate and make himself a nuisance in midfield, especially as well. I think one thing people are forgetting about Man City, yes, they actually play very good football, but they're actually quite physical in midfield. They're not a typical Pep Guardiola team that's all little fellas in midfield, tiki-taka, and they have a small front three as well. It's not that. Like, you look at their team, they've the likes of Rodri, De Bruyne is out, but they've the likes of him in midfield, John Stone steps into midfield. Like, I think if you look at our midfield right now, Amrabat's a bit lightweight. Not in a bad way either, though he's small. Like Casemiro, he's very strong. Bruno's a bit lightweight. Mount is a bit lightweight. Christian Eriksen's lightweight. Does Ten Hag maybe look at this, Phil, and say, looking how when you look at the two defeats we had against Man City last year, at the Etihad and especially at Wembley, it was the second balls and 50-50 is what we were losing, and what ultimately lost us the game nearly.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I think he's got license in this game really to maybe have a bit of a gamble and sort of mix his team selection up. In terms of the Casemiro one, for me, I would tend to agree with Julio in terms of, if your best players are available in this type of game, your experience is going to be massive. I would probably give him the nod, just in terms of, for that bit of steel and experience in the middle of the park. It's difficult, I think, because of the way we've had so many injuries and we are quite disjointed. I think that's having a massive effect on the way and the style of play that we're trying to sort of utilise at this moment in time. As you just touched on there, I think, the full backs not being able to get overlapping is hindering the front forward line and not being able to get balls in the box, which then has a knock-on effect with Højlund and not getting the service that he probably wants. So it's going to be interesting to see what he lines up with. City are obviously going into the game as massive favourites and we're not sort of really under any real pressure by probably anybody other than ourselves to try and get a result. But for me, City at this moment in time aren't firing on all cylinders. It's an opportunity for us to sort of, kickstart our season really, if you like. If we can get a good result and hopefully, with some of the players who's been coming under scrutiny, Onana the other night with a big save and Harry Maguire getting on the score sheet. We need some of these players who, haven't really been performing at the best and squad players, if you like, to step up and really put in a big performance and hopefully get us a positive result. Because, as I say, the season has been a little bit disjointed, and I think our three best performances have actually come against the three best teams we've played. I think, you look back at the season so far, we've played well against Bayern Munich away. We've scored 3 goals, come away with nothing. Tottenham, we played well. The penalty decision, we could have, that could have gone a different way. And Arsenal, obviously, the way that game finished. So,
yeah.
Fully, if we're looking at it as a barometer for how the game might pan out, I'm hoping that, we can put in a good performance and maybe a decision or a goal might go in our favour to get us a result this time.
Yeah, it might be like last year with that VA. I remember last year when we got that decision when Bruno scored that goal. Old Trafford, fuck. I was at the game last year and I swear to God, Old Trafford is rusty. It's fucked. The stadium's fucked. I thought the stadium was going to fall down when the referee gave us the goal. I swear to God, everyone went fucking nuts. But yeah, look, I think in the big games this season, our performances haven't been too bad. I think, look, the the one at Spurs, I think, the second half we maybe could have played a bit better, but first half we were very, very good. Arsenal, I thought we were really good that day, and just we had Premier League referee Keane Hackett on, former Premier League referee Keane Hackett on here, and he said that Garnacho one was a goal. So like, look, we've had very close games. I think the Bayern Munich one as well, like scoring 3 goals away at the Allianz is good. Now, maybe could have Bayern Munich kicked into another gear? Who knows? We'll find out in December when we bring them back to Old Trafford. But I think the most important thing here for me is that the players still stand up and be counted. Like I see Jonathan saying in the comments there that, if Bruno and Rashford start Sunday, we'll lose. I don't know. Like, to be fair, maybe the argument is there for Bruno because maybe in some big games he hasn't played well. But I think when you look at Rashford's big game record, it's exceptional. Like, when you look at his goal scoring record, especially against Manchester City, it's like he scores every 1 and 2 against Man City. I think Greg was saying that stat to me today. So, like, look, he is a big game player, Marcus Rashford. I think, look, he's struggling this season, but like, do you play Garnacho from the start, considering how much of an impact he can make off the bench? Especially looking what he done. When you look at Garnacho's impact off the bench in both, like in the game with Old Trafford and in the FA Cup final. I know he didn't get a goal and assist, but he gave us that something different off the bench. I just feel with Garnacho at the minute, we need to manage his minutes, but also as well, Rashford does have to perform. I agree with what Stu said earlier. Rashford does have to perform. But in this type of game, you need experience. And, like, can you throw Garnacho into that? Especially with the fact if, like, let's say, for example, if Reguilon is in there, and Reguilon's only played 1 game, in that respect, you kind of need your most experienced players out there and your match winners. Like, Rashford is a match winner. Bruno has been a match winner. I just think right now, if you look at our options in central midfield, especially with Bruno Fernandes, who plays ahead of him? Mason Mount, maybe? But then that means McTominay has to start. If Casemiro isn't fit. Do you play Anthony on the right? We're going to discuss our starting 11s, like, obviously later on the podcast, and I can get the lads' 2 cents on that there. But I think it's very important that you do play your experienced players. Like, regardless, I'm not excusing people's form. I do think you have to play better. Anyone who's like been on the show with me this year, I've been quite frank in the fact that this squad needs to be producing better. Like, I'm using last season as a barometer for this season. Like, if you're able to go out and finish third and win the Carabao Cup, arguably lose the FA Cup in moments, and a goalkeeper mistake away from getting knocked out of the Europa League, I don't give a shit. You have to be that consistency has to stay. Like, 110% has to stay, because at the end of the day, right? Look, was Mason Mount the right signing? No, we probably needed a player like not Frankie de Jong himself, but a player like him in terms of controlling games, to help Casemiro beside him. Maybe was Rasmus Højlund the right signing? I think long term he's going to be, because like he's shown that promise. I think we have to be patient. I said at the start of the season, a right back and a centre back I thought were absolutely crucial, and lads were saying to me, no, midfield up front. I got absolutely lambasted in the comments. Julio, you were on that show with me actually. When I was saying that I might sound greedy, but I want new defenders. Look at our injuries. So, like, look, I do think squad depth's needed. I do think players right now in the what's happening with injuries, especially, I think players need to step up. And 2 players actually in the last 2 weeks have stepped up, Stu. That's Harry Maguire and Andre Onana. And Paul says in the comments here, you'd like to think that the Maguire and Onana moments now inspire players out of form. Now is the time to show up. Do you think, especially with Andre Onana now, like he's kind of had a bit of a steady kind of couple of weeks, since his kind of last kind of mistake in the team? Do you think getting some of these players back from injury now, your Reguilons, Raphael Varane back in the back 4, Maguire starting to hit a bit of form, do you think we'll see the best of Andre Onana once he gets a settled back 4 in front of him?
Yeah, in answer to your question, we will. But actually, if you've noticed, he's changed the way that he plays anyway. He doesn't dick about with it at the back at the minute. He's just concentrating on keeping goal, which is what he should have done when he came through the door, rather than try this elaborate play out from the back type thing. So I do kind of think that I'd take a little bit of Paul's comment with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because you shouldn't need 2 moments in a game to inspire you as a professional footballer. It just shouldn't happen. You need that inspiration yourself. Every time you cross that white line, you should have that your own thumb up your own arse to make yourself play better. What's interesting enough about this particular game for me is that I think you'll see a different type of Onana, a much stronger Maguire. I know Haaland won't be relishing playing against somebody equally, the same size, probably stronger than what Haaland is, yet nowhere near quicker. I get that. But you'll watch Maguire will probably play 10 yards deeper anyway to cut any kind of travelling distance between him and the goal, which is what I would do if I was defending Haaland. But what I would do, and it's something that, and I know we'll talk about this later, so I'm just going to gloss over it quickly, but I would kind of go with what Phil says in terms of the way that we play and the way that we set up in this particular game. And I would, and I'll talk to you a bit more about it, but I would not particularly pack the midfield, but I'd make our midfield a bit more symmetrical. And I'm talking 2+2. And those two players can then use the width when necessary. When we're in possession, when we're out of possession, we can tuck in. Because because what you got to do is stop their inverted fullbacks, because that's what they like to do, and that will help.
Stepping in from centre back as well.
Exactly, and then B, kind of take Rodri out of the game. And you can take Rodri out of the game. I'm not talking about man marking Rodri or anything like that. But what I'm doing is snuffing him out of the game. Enable us to do that would be a 2+2 kind of thing. Phil would have played that plenty of times back in the day when Sir Alex was playing a straight 4-4-2. Then there's a variation of how you play a 4-4-2. And that means I'd play two up top. But I'll talk about it a bit, when we go through the formation. Yeah. You're absolutely right about Onana. But he has, if you must have noticed, Keane, he's completely changed his game just recently. Last two games, he's become less extrovert and a little bit more introvert, and that's helped him. His concentration levels are so much better. He's not bothering about, making a short-term pass or doing a Cruyff turn against anyone like that. He's concentrating his keeping goal. And as a centre-half, mate, I love it. I think he'll do very, very well for us this weekend. But I haven't got a problem with Paul's comment, but I just don't think that those two moments.
To be fair, I agree with you. I don't think, in a sense, you need two players who've been on the fringes in terms of their form to inspire you. If you're in 200, you're playing for the biggest club in England. That should be enough inspiration as it is.
Absolutely.
You're going out to Manchester Derby against the team who just won the treble. That should be enough inspiration. Look, and this is not me diminishing Maguire or Onana. Look, I'm absolutely delighted for the two of them. For the other night, saving the penalty and the goal, I thought it was poetic justice. But look, at the end of the day, when you play for Man United, you're a Man United player. You need to, obviously, have a standard. And there's a lot of players this season who haven't had that standard. But look, I agree with you in terms of Onana, though. I look at it and I think when we get our best defence back, i.e., Wan-Bissaka, Varane, Martinez, Shaw, he'll be able to play the short passes because he'll have players on the ball who will be capable of doing it. When it's Lindelof back there with, let's say, Dalot, you're kind of struggling in that sense. Varane, yeah, he's probably our best defender aerially, but on the ball sometimes he takes maybe a touch too many. Whereas last season, Lisandro Martinez was exceptional at taking the ball out from the back and then breaking that first line, in that first phase. So I do think if you get, I know Martinez, we're talking hypothetically because he's not back till December, January time, and Shaw's not back till after the November international break. But one thing I will see with Andre Onana is once them lads come back into the team, he'll be able to start playing that style. And then you have Amrabat then dropping back in to take the ball as well. So Onana will have that extra option. I'm talking future tense here, but what I say is people need to stick it out with Onana because there's a reason why Ten Hag signed them.
Yeah, look, you're absolutely right. Actually, it's a really interesting point you make about Amrabat being able to take the short ball. The way that Ten Hag's wanting Maguire to play, he's wanting to play, over 40, 50 yards, rather than take it and knock it into Amrabat. It's all right for players to want to do that, but Maguire is slowly but surely playing it back into a lot of form. Yeah, absolutely right, Paul. I agree with that. And Amrabat's game's suffering a little bit by virtue of what Ten Hag wants Maguire to do. So I think you're absolutely right. Once Martinez comes back in, and Varane maybe slots alongside him, you'll see Amrabat or Casemiro or whoever receive the ball a lot shorter rather than longevity.
That's what we even done last year with the Keane goal. And even though we all know how many times Rose Ed was a destination for the ball when he had the ball, but in some phases of build up last year, that them three players were very vital for United in terms of how we changed the way we played football. So look, with the ball playing goalkeeper, hopefully that happens. But Julio, obviously, we're going to talk about the opposition. We're going to change gears here, because obviously Erling Haaland is a player Stu mentioned. Obviously he's always going to be that goal threat. He's an absolute machine. When it comes to goal scoring. But I want to turn the attention to a player who I think is probably, and you might disagree with me, and the comments might disagree with me. I think who's probably going to be even a bigger threat than Haaland this weekend is Julian Alvarez in that new number 10 role. We've seen the struggles we've had, like with our number 6, in terms of having that kind of floating player in midfield. We had it against Musiala, had it against James Maddison, and in the Arsenal game, Odegaard at points as well. Do you worry about Julian Alvarez, first of all, the form he's in right now, but also his ability to kind of rotate with Phil Foden in Man City's attack?
Keane, since the Copenhagen game, I've thought so much about what we're going to do that I've completely forgotten about. For a brief moment, I forgot what City had in their arsenal, and you've just reminded me the fear of Alvarez. I mean, listen, there was a reason that we were linked with him a while back during the Ralf Rangnick era. Everyone knew that he was a good young player out there in Argentina, and coming into this ready-made machine that is City and being able to be coached into the team to adapt and even hit a couple of new levels, at least from what he was before, obviously comes down to how good City are with a coaching setup, with a team setup, with everything. And as much as it pains me to say it, from top to bottom, charges aside, in a footballing perspective, it seems
I'm going to come to that. I'm going to come to that. Don't worry.
It seems that they've got a lot good for them, whereas us on the red side of Manchester have, like, everything seems to be on fire, like there ain't enough fire engines to put out one fire here, and it's just a mess. But listen, I think City could literally play any team and it will be a tough contest. We've known that for years. There was that famous Jose quote of, who's going to finish top 4 this season or challenge for the league, Man City, Liverpool, Man City B team. They've always had a very strong squad in terms of if someone's out, someone else can come back in. For example, the new boy Doku's come in, and I'm liking what I see from him. And he's not been in that long, and it worries me that he could not play the weekend, for example, but someone else could come in and cause just as much of a threat.
Especially
if we're playing Lindelof at left back. As worrying as that is, it's a sticky situation. I think that you have to be worried for all these players, but at the same time, like, anyone they play is going to be good. Even if Ederson wasn't playing, you could argue that maybe Ortega's a better shot stopper. So it's almost like you got to stick to our game. We've got to stick to our game plan. We've got to set up perfectly for what we want to do. Yes, they're going to come at us, but we've got to be able to fight back, So
yeah, 100%.
I don't know what to make of who plays, because for City, that is, because whilst Alvarez is in top form, Haaland can maybe, Haaland maybe needs one chance and he can score. Other games maybe he doesn't. Alvarez, for example, he's on fire at the moment. So and listen, City aren't as convincing as they have been in recent years, but at the same time, they do tend to start the season slowly. So, and they still win the league at the end of the season in the last couple of years at least. So, we got to be ready for whoever they play.
Yeah, 100%. I think one thing you'd say about Pep Guardiola as well is that he's very flexible and he rotates his teams quite a bit. Like, especially if you play Fantasy Premier League, let's say, for example, anyone here who plays it, you all know not, like, sometimes not to put Man City players in, especially in the attacking roles, because he always rotates. You don't know what he's going to do. And the fact that you mentioned it, Julio, like he has Doku, like Jack Grealish is on the bench for some games. When you look at how well he played for City last year, and he's on the bench for him. Then on the right, Bernardo Silva can play there, but then also as well, Phil Foden can go out there. Alvarez has played out there. Sometimes they even put Kyle Walker up a bit. Like, there's so many ways he's tactically flexible. I think one thing Eric Ten Hag's going to have to do is just make sure that we're solid in midfield, like Stu said, and we're just organised. I think, like, look, we've beat City at home last season already, so like we know we can do it on the day. It's just, again, look, yes, you look at the injuries, yes, that's a problem, but I think, look, at the end of the day, you're Man United, you have to go out and, regardless of who was on the pitch, you have to go out and put out 100%, and that's what you have to do. But Nathan, when you look at Manchester City this year, obviously Julio mentioned that they probably haven't been at full throttle this season. But do you look at the fact that they're still picking up results, even though despite maybe performances not being as convincing as they've been in years past? Do you maybe look at that as a worrying thing, considering we don't sometimes, like, if you look at the way we've been playing this season, we don't take our chances in front of goal. Are you worried the fact that they're still grinding results? Do you think that could be a worry Sunday? Let's say if we do play well and not take our chances.
I mean, it's that old mantra, is it? You don't play well and win the game. It's the staple of a champion winning team, So it worries me a little bit that I don't think they've got out of second gear. They've been coasting their results. They haven't really had to put full throttle and still winning games. Haaland hasn't been quite up to it. I mean, he scored 2 in the week, but even by his standards, that's not great. He's an absolute machine of a man. So it's going to be interesting. I have to say, I'm more excited about this derby than any other derby we've had. I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen. But it is one of those games where you think City don't even have to really go full throttle early on, and they could probably still easily win. But I am confident in our team that there's that little bit of belief. I think the most important thing for me about any United team in a derby is going out on your shield. If you lose, as long as you've absolutely put every blood, sweat and tears into that game, I'm okay with that. If you're struggling by the end of once that whistle blows and everyone just falls to their feet, they're all absolutely shattered, and you're on the back of a 1-0 defeat, I would take that. I would be like, okay, if the guys on Sunday on the match review say, you know what, we came on the back of a bad result, but they have absolutely played their socks off today, it's okay. But I am confident enough that we may be able to steal something from this.
Yeah, look, derbies, and Phil, you probably know better than most of us, form does go out the window. You've played in Manchester derbies yourself. We've spoke about this before on many podcasts we've done together in terms of derbies. Do you think, when you look at certain players like the Scott McTominay's the world, Marcus Rashford's, especially when you look at obviously the unfortunate passing of Sir Bobby being there, do you think having them, our proper lads or United lads there, that they'll have that extra 10-20% in the bank, because of their upbringing through the club? And do you think they could actually be the players that could help drive this team on Sunday?
You'd certainly hope so. As you just touched there, the lads who've been at the club since a young age, that will be drilled into them lads, and they'll know firsthand what it is and what it means to play in them kind of games. I'm sure all the other lads who have been there for a number of seasons now know how much the derby game means. Obviously, Sir Bobby's passing as well, that should add a little extra bit of the fire in the belly for some of the players. But again, it's not just about the derby games for me. I think this season what's been frustrating is that some of these other games where we've not played well, you're looking at players' performance levels and thinking, why? What is the reason for a dip in form, not putting 100% effort in, not hitting the standards that you've been showing previously? And I think that just basically comes down to, there's a number of reasons. Obviously, we've had a lot of injuries, but for me, I'm still scratching my head and looking at how, when we're playing, what's the style of play, what is the sort of identity of this team. And again, we can put that down to injuries, but I think, the squad that we've got, we should be doing a lot better with what we've got. and sort of imposing ourselves on some of these games that we've not really been doing. So I think this is a big game that obviously, we are going to need that grit and determination, regardless of the performance on the ball. I think this game's won and lost, a lot of the times just with the pure grit and determination and the desire to, want to win a game of football and run through a brick wall for your teammates. So yeah, I think it is going to be an interesting game, but I think, every player, you can't be carrying players, especially not in the derby games. You've got to make sure everyone's pulling together and putting a shift in. But then also you've got to be cool in the head and sort of have that little bit of composure, quality on the ball, which we have been lacking. But hopefully, in the big games this year, we have played quite well. I'm hoping that is a sort of good omen that we can look at and have a bit of hope from.
Yeah, look, I think that there needs to be a fine balance there. And again, I think you've mentioned, Phil, look, there's certain games this season we haven't played well. There's been a catalogue of games this season we haven't played well. But I think, look, it goes without saying when you have to have a bit of personal pride. I think this is where some of these players are going to have to get that now. And I think one thing I will say is, if there's new ownership coming in and a new sporting structure coming in, this season is do or die for, I'd say, 75% of this squad. I'd say even 80. I'll go as high as 80% of this squad. When you look at if Paul Mitchell and all these lads come in, they're going to want to bring in their own players. They're going to want to implement their own style. Potentially, Ten Hag will have more, say so in terms of getting rid of players because we'll have a footballing structure there to get rid of players. So there's a lot of players in this team who might think they're secure. I'll be honest, I don't think they are. There's players here who've under-delivered for a long time. And they've got away with it because the ownership at the top doesn't give a fuck about the club enough to put a structure in place, to be ruthless and keep the club fresh. So I do think right now, if you're doesn't matter if you're Marcus Rashford, Bruno Fernandes, Casemiro, I'd even say it doesn't matter if you're Scott McTominay. Everyone's place is under threat this season. There's maybe that one or two who are probably irreplaceable in their squad at the moment. One or two, and that's me being brutally honest in terms of the quality. But there's a lot of players who are under threat this year.
Sorry, just jump in on that. I think obviously we've touched on this, ourselves over the years, especially in recent years, about the complacency of some of these players. Just thinking that they're guaranteed to be playing week in, week out, regardless of performance levels. And I think that what you've just said there obviously falls into the bracket of why the performance levels have been so fluctuated. And certain players, because of injuries and lack of quality and squad depth, feel as though, regardless of how they perform on a regular basis, they're still going to be getting picked because they just feel as though that there's nobody else who can come in. But as we say, that is where and how I think this team is going to move forward eventually, because as you say, there should be nobody who's guaranteed a starting slot, and you earn the right to keep your shirt from week to week.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And I think, look, at the end of the day, there's so many players in this team that have just rode on the coattails of having a reputation rather than actually doing it on the pitch, especially post Sir Alex. Anyway, look, when Sir Alex there, Phil, you even knew yourself, it didn't matter if you're Cristiano Ronaldo or Jason Park or Darren Fletcher. You have to work to get into that team. And at the end of the day, should be no different now. But we are 44 minutes into the podcast. So what I do want to do is obviously we're going to do our starting 11 and score predictions, and we're going to do a fun little topic at the end. So I like actually what I'm trying to implement in these shows is I'm trying to stitch the lads up and give them a little challenge at the end of every stream. If anyone watched the last podcast I hosted, I put Phil and Dale on the spot to name their 5-a-side team to play against each other. And I absolutely killed the two of them with it. So I will have the lads doing something here now as well in a moment. But we will do start 11 and score predictions now, because obviously there's 5 of us here. We could have all the same 11 or maybe different variations. So we're going to kind of change this up a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Phil, Marsh and Stu the back 4 and the goalkeeper now, not unless they want to bring David De Gea back and get him to start Sunday. I'm guessing Onana is going to be in goal with the two of you boys. But what's your back four, if you can discuss it there?
Onana, yeah, obviously starts in net for me.
Yeah, I'm with that.
You're going to right back, Stewie. Are you happy with Dallo or?
Yeah, I'll go with Dallo. Right. Look, I know Wan-Bissaka's back in training, isn't he? Yeah. So for me, I think you're going to have to start Dallo in this game for definite, and Reguilón left back. I think that's all I would say.
Right, mate, yeah.
Yeah, and then
What
I
are you
think
thinking, lads?
you are sorry.
What are you thinking for centre half?
I think it picks itself today, doesn't it? For me, it's Varane and Maguire. I think that just picks itself. I think that's our best option. Don't know what you think, Phil.
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree. I think just based off, what City's threats are, I think, as you mentioned before, that sort of physical duel between Haaland and Maguire would sort of, marry up quite well, and you'd hope with his pace could be the extra man there in behind. So yeah, I would agree with that. I think, on paper we would, be looking at a different lineup if everybody was fit, obviously, but I think with what we've got available at the moment, that's probably the sort of best we could hope for, really.
Yeah, and I'd like Maguire to pop one on Alvarez first 5 minutes. Again, see if he can bounce off him, see what happens, see if he gets up or not.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Knowing the way the referees are going, they'll book him 5 minutes into the game, then you have to bench for 85 minutes. Then that'd be our luck. So lads have gone with a back five, obviously Onana, Dallo, Varane, Maguire, and the Reguilón. Yeah, that kind of picks itself. Now,
yeah,
I know Stu wanted to set up midfield, so Stu, feel free to interject when the lads pick their midfield.
Okay.
So Julio and Nathan, you have to agree on a midfield 4, midfield 5, midfield 3, whatever you feel like going with. And then Stu and Phil, you have the luxury then of interjecting and see if you agree or disagree. And so, lads, what do you think? What setup are you going with in midfield?
What are you thinking? A midfield 4 or?
I mean,
4-4-2,
while we're talking about it, I've actually managed to find a notebook, and I'm actually trying to figure it out. And the midfield is where the only bit that I've only got 2 names, and I've got McTominay and Bruno. They're the only 2 names I've got in the middle of my park at the minute. So
I was thinking we lock and load that midfield with Casemiro, Amrabat, McTominay, and Bruno. I think if we go for a midfield 4, you get that grit, you get that energy, but there is that little bit of creativity with Bruno up there. But
totally agree, Julio. Totally agree, Julio. Except flick McTominay out and pop in Eriksen, and I'll tell you why. If I may, if I may. So you've got Eriksen and Bruno. You are sorry.
No, I said feel free to interject. That's what I said.
Oh yeah. So you've got Eriksen and Bruno all playing almost their natural roles. So it leaves 2 up top, by the way, if we do this and that. I think those 2 pick themselves. But they've got their natural roles. And what I was talking about is a 2+2. Some people are saying, we'll just play the diamond, play Bruno and Eriksen Bruno and Amrabat slightly wide and put Casemiro as a holding player. I would put Amrabat as a holding player.
Casemiro box.
Casemiro as a box-to-box 8. You've got the creativity there of Eriksen, and you've got Bruno playing just behind the front 2 of, in my opinion, it's just Højlund and Rashford. And that will give City 2 problems. First and foremost, they won't be able to play their inverted wingers with any kind of the way they get any kind of, just trying to think of the word really. They won't get away anyway as easy as they have. They just won't be able to cut through us. Secondly, and more importantly, it stops us Rashford going up against Kyle Walker, because he doesn't get anywhere with him. It's a pointless match. And whoever plays, whether it's a Kanji or
Rashford's done him a few times, though. I think they're a bit 50-50
times. But if he loses it, you've got this 20-yard straight away for Walker to go, and you're not going to catch him. So that completely cuts that out. And I think almost you can then interswap Casemiro, you can interswap Amrabat, and you can then change Eriksen and Bruno as well. So I think it's a more fluid 4. I'm not saying it will work, but I just think you've got to do something a little bit different. to catch Mr. Guardiola out. That's how I see it, fellas.
I just worry with Eriksen being in there, because we've seen him play against City twice, 3 times, and he just keeps getting run ragged. Now, obviously, having 3 others around him,
Well,
obviously, it might negate that.
Yeah, it'll
But
stop it.
At some points, I feel like Eriksen would be best coming off the bench. But, I think either way.
Just to add to what both of you have said, like Stu and Julio on Eriksen, right? Last season, he started as a number 10 last year. Bruno played on the right beside him to support him, and Fred started beside Casemiro.
Yeah.
So maybe you're right. Maybe with the bit of protection in there, with the likes of Casemiro and Bat, and even Bruno to an extent, he covers a lot of ground as well. Maybe he can have that bit of license to get on the ball. But again, it's just about, if City, let's say, put Rodri and Stones in midfield, he could get fit outmanned in there then.
I think they'll do that. I think they'll put Rodri and Stones in there. And I think if we go one less in there, we'll have problems.
Yeah, that's the thing. Look, I think Pep is very fluid with that. Look, I have no argument with either midfield. I think if you put McTominay in there, he has someone in there to match John Stones in midfield and Rodri. I think for a physical battle, I think obviously then if you put Eriksen in there, you kind of have someone who's a bit better on the ball. Obviously, you've all agreed on the front two, which is Højlund and Rashford. It's actually weird. I was thinking about this the other day, that the only other player I'd throw into the mix in the two is Anthony Martial beside Højlund. And I'll tell you why.
It's massively interesting that.
The only thing I tell you why about this, and you might all tell me to get the fuck off my show and end the stream now, but the one thing I would say with Martial is he's very good in the ball and bringing other players into play, and having likes of Rasmus Højlund there, with Rashford sometimes, yes, Rashford might give him that service, whereas with Martial, he does have that ability to bring others into play and be creative. So that would be my only other option. I know, look, Rashford has to play, a big game player. But if you want to be tactically sack the board, sack me, absolutely.
I think that's a massively good shout, Keane, actually. And I think those two will complement each other quite well. And Martial's got a little bit about him, and he's playing pretty well at the minute. Martial is when he's coming on. He's playing decent. I wouldn't be against that, actually, pal, at all.
It's a very close scoring record against Man City as well. I think, that's the only thing. The only thing I think is with this, right? If you have Højlund and Rashford up front as a two, let's say, Højlund can be that man who can win that flick on Rashford in behind. You can get that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But ultimately, if you Martial dropping into them little spaces and then putting them little penetrating passes into Højlund to get in behind, he's very rapid as well.
He could get in behind, for a flick on as well, to be fair, Keane. He's not... He has lost a yard of pace, Martial. There's no two ways about it. But he's looked sharp when he's been on. He's looked dangerous. I wouldn't be against that, actually.
I just wanted to throw a curveball in there to see if any of you fuck me over. But, yeah, you've been respectful, so...
Well, I don't know. I don't think Nathan's too happy.
No, Nathan's not happy.
Nathan's having none of it.
That's what this is about. This is why I want variety. I don't want this to be... a situation where we all have to listen to what I say, and this is why I wanted someone to challenge me on it. But yeah, look, it's an option. Look, it's if you're playing to front, Martial is the more natural striker than Rashford would be.
Give it to him, mate. Come on.
The only problem I have with Martial, I really loved Martial in that first sort of when he came. I was so excited about it, and obviously that Liverpool goal was. I was on holiday at the time, and I've never got so drunk on holiday in my life, and that goal went unbelievable. It was brilliant. But it's just that he has those games and you think, oh, he's getting better. Oh, wait, no, now he's disappeared. Oh, he's injured, and then he's gone again. So I think we're in that sort of, he has got sort of this cycle where it comes back from injury, plays a little bit, doesn't really do anything. Then he plays really well. And then you think, oh, there's something happening. Oh, he disappears. Oh, now he's injured. Now he's disappeared again. So there's this lifestyle about Martial. I really like him as a player. Just sometimes I wish he smiled a little bit more. There is that about him. He's always, playing for Manchester United, come on, you could smile every now and again, but there we are. So that's my only...
Don't let Roy Keane hear you say that, because last time someone said that in front of Roy Keane, he's like, why should he smile? Bill would know that.
Yeah, that would go.
Smile. It's an interesting point there, Nath. Actually, it's a good point as well, because, he does have this, appears to have this shelf life, doesn't he, for 4 or 5 games. That's my issue with McTominay, by the way. He has that similar shelf life. To me, he was non-existent really against Copenhagen. A lot of people thought he was decent. I just didn't. He didn't. For my expectations of what he can offer, he didn't deliver. I don't think he's as fluid. I don't think that 4 was as fluid with McTominay in there as it is with Eriksen, due to the creativity side. But actually, I kind of take your point about McTominay being a bulldozer up against maybe Rodri or up against Jones. Yeah, I get that. I can see that.
It's kind of the same role, Stu. It's kind of the same role as what Fred used to do in them big games. When he kind of he was kind of that person that went and get at them. I think that's a double-edged sword Ten Hag has. Now, to be honest, we've all said midfield 4, but if he goes in midfield 3, what does he do there then? That's the I think the big thing I have with this is if you've Dalot and Reguilon playing as fullbacks and we play that, let's say that midfield diamond on midfield 4, let's say the 4-2-2, that we could play there, right? Our fullbacks are going to have to be massively proactive, but also have the sense to drop in when we need to. I think that's the big thing here.
I think Reguilon could. One thing I'll say, and Julio made a good point about Casemiro, and so did Phil, and Phil will know this anyway, but you can afford a 60 or 70% Casemiro if you provide quality alongside him. So you can afford that, and I think you might see Ten Hag gamble on that, but he's got to gamble with the right players. And again, McTominay, for me, I don't know whether you quite trust him. If you've got a 60 or 70% Casemiro, you might with Eriksen. Hey, look, you could even take Eriksen out and put Mount in. Mount isn't as creative, but my God, he's got an engine. And that, again, would be a really good 4. What do you reckon, Phil?
I agree. I think it'll all depend on, how he sets up. I was actually even just trying to think of, if he went with a 3, potentially putting Rashford on the right-hand side and maybe looking at, getting him on the outside and putting some balls into the box for Højlund. I think, obviously, he's preferred off the left. Keep him away from Walker. Would he get a little bit more joy on the opposite wing and maybe, give them a different problem? But yeah, I mean, again, it's a conundrum the manager's got to have a look at, and I actually like the one what you've just mentioned there with the 2-2-2 and sort of having that fluidity in the middle of the park where it will sort of stop City getting out as much and having the obviously inverted fullbacks is what they like to play from. So I think that would be a little bit of a curveball for them.
Yeah, so look, I think they'd be expecting us to go 4-3-3, like I'd say, because that's what we've kind of played for the majority of the season. I think that's what, if they're doing their when they're doing their prep for the game. I think, look, Jarvis is throwing in another curveball, and none of us has mentioned Hannibal to man Mark Rodri.
That was one of my sub options if it all went wrong during the game at some point. I can't lie. Yeah,
it's not a bad shout, but then Hannibal, Rodri, I see a red card happening there between either one of the two of them.
If we're 4-0 down, it appeases Stu that someone went in and hurt someone else and got sent off for it. Okay,
I'd be happy about that. Yeah, I'd be happy about it. It's an interesting shout, Motorbury. Interesting shout. I like Jarvis. Jarvis knows a lot about the game, but not for me, that one, unfortunately. But I can see where he's going with it.
Yeah, maybe in the second half, if we need a bit more industry and a bit more legs in there. But I think starting from the start would be a very Ten Hag done it with Elanga against Liverpool last year. It would be a very bold move if he done it. But look, we're going to get quick fire score predictions, and then I'm going to
Do we agree on the 4 in the middle?
Yeah, which one are we going to go for, Eriksen or McTominay?
Eriksen for me.
Julio, you're mutable. I think you said Eriksen, did you?
I said yes, actually, because it could be either or. I'll go with Eriksen.
Had McTominay,
I trust Stu. I'll go with Eriksen on this.
Yeah, so we'll go Eriksen there. So then we've midfield diamond, Casemiro, Amrabat, Bruno, Eriksen, and then Højlund, Rashford up top, and my anti-Martial protest didn't get in there, but I wanted to throw that in anyway for the crack. But on that, look, we will get quick fire score predictions from everybody. Nathan, what's your score prediction for Sunday?
I'm going to go 1-0 McTominay off the bench at the 60th minute.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be lovely.
You're not going Martial then, Dave?
No. Julio.
Either we win 2-1 from a Ruben Diaz own goal, or we lose 4-1.
Oh, okay. Any more upbeat score predictions, Stu?
I think it'll be high scoring, and I think we'll sneak it 3-2. And it'll be. But I think we'll be on the wrong end. We'll go behind. No two ways about it. But I actually think we'll sneak it 3-2. And to be honest, I've got no rhyme nor reason for that score. I just think we'll do it, and I think Holland will net the winner. I don't know. I just think we're going to do it. I don't know.
I'd absolutely love that. I'd just shit over the likes of all them pundits, Gabriel Bonlahor and all them little dickheads. It'd be just great if Rasmus Højlund did score the winner. It'd be poetic justice. Phil, I'm finally going to leave it to you. Are Manchester United going to get the 3 points on Sunday?
My head is saying a draw, just purely based off me not being as optimistic as I'd like to be. But I think the lads inspired me there by, giving us 3 winning results. So I'll have to go with a win. I'm going to say 2-1. 2-1 United.
Come on.
So I'll say 2-1 United. I'm going to say Rashford. I think Rashford obviously could do with a goal just to get his confidence back up. So I'm going to say Rashford, and I'm going to go for an Amrabat goal. I think Amrabat to come on, or to sort of come up with a good winning moment late on.
30 yards strike.
He's had a couple of good shots from the edge of the box, hasn't he, recently? So
he hit the bar, didn't he, the other week?
Yeah. So I'm hoping he can open his account with a Derby Day winner.
Lads have gone with a couple of wins. We had a draw in there and then slash a win. Usually I'm the optimistic one, but when I'm optimistic, we lose. So I'm going to have to go a bit more pragmatic to hoping that the law of averages work out here. I'm going to go 3-3. And we get a controversial decision to get us the equaliser late on. Bruno penalty probably. Johnny FX, I love that one. But on that, we've all our score predictions sorted out, and we have the midfield sorted out. We actually all agreed with each other, which is great. But what we're going to do here is I'm going to get the lads to have a small little debate for like 5-10 minutes here on this. So what we're going to do in terms of Manchester United teams. So we're going to do this kind of like Jamie, you do on OT theory. We're going to team the lads up again. So no preparation done at all here. So in terms of Manchester derbies and Manchester United teams, which team would win? So we're going to go either the 2011 title winning team with the Wayne Rooney goal, the bicycle kick, or the 2013 team that beat City at the Etihad. So if one of you want to open up a tab on your computer there, look at both starting lineups for the games. If you want to bring that up now, and if you need assistance, I will bring the starting lineups in, and we can discuss which team would win in a one-off game. Both of them teams that started that game. So, do you want me to bring up the teams, or do you want to?
Bring them
up here. Bring them up here.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get this up here now. So,
I think I remember it roughly, but yeah, bring it up.
This would be a great one because I know Phil would have played a lot of these players as well. So, it would be great to debate it out. So, Phil and 2010, 2011. I know you said the team that lost 6-1 there. Thank God I didn't say that. So let's get you the lineups there now. And then the comments can decide either live now or in that there. So 1 second there. I'll grab it for you there. I'll get the lineup there for you. There you go. So the lineup for Man United's team in 2011 when Wayne Rooney scored that bicycle kick was Edmund van der Sar in goal, John O'Shea right back, the centre-back pairing of Nemanja Vidic and Chris Smalling, and Patrice Evra, a left-back. Then we had a midfield 5 of Anderson, Ryan Giggs, Nani, Paul Scholes, and Darren Fletcher with Wayne Rooney up top. So do you have that? Do you have that team down, Stu?
No, but I can remember that.
You remember that one? Perfect.
Yeah.
Now, what I'll do is I'll grab the 2013 team, and then the lads can have a little debate tactically who would win this game. And you can see out of this then who would win this game in the discussion, hypothetically on paper. So to grab Nathan and Julio, their 11. So the 11 that Julio and Nathan have is David De Gea in goal, a young David De Gea, Raphael at right back with Evra at left back, Rio Ferdinand and Johnny Evans as the centre halves. Then we have again a midfield 5 here of Wayne Rooney, Michael Carrick, Tom Cleverley, Antonio Valencia, and Ashley Young, with Robin van Persie as the striker. So looking at both teams, they're actually more or less, I'd say nearly 9, 10 of the players are different in different positions. But on that, reflecting on the teams that are there, I'll take this to Phil and Stu there first. Make your case for the 2011 team in that game.
Case for that. Jesus, that was a weak team, wasn't it? I mean, Jesus Christ. When you look at the spine of that, Van der Sar, decent, Vidic, obviously, Scholes and Giggs, and Rooney, and maybe Fletcher in there. But, Evra, for me, was not as solid as a lot of the fans remember him to be. He was a terrific fullback, but he wasn't as solid. I mean, O'Shea was playing at right back, and he was predominantly spent his career at left back or centre half, didn't he? And Anderson, I mean, Jesus Christ, didn't he win something like 5 Premier League titles for some reason or something ridiculous?
Very good for that knee injury, though. Very good for that injury, and then he had his issues then afterwards. But I actually think he was great.
I find it hard to make a case. I don't know about you, Phil, but I find it hard to make a case for the 2011 team.
I mean, I agree. I think, you've got that little bit of quality with Scholes in the midfield. I think Fletcher was probably a little bit underrated. Rooney, not really much to say about Rooney in terms of, his credentials. I think, he's one of the best strikers the Premier League's seen. Vidic, somebody who I was lucky enough to play with, absolute warrior. Van der Sar, one of the best keepers, Premier League scene. So again, I do think
the experience of your team would maybe help you go over the line.
Yeah, I think just off the sort of experience there of the spine, what we've just touched on, Van der Sar, Vidic, Scholes, Giggs, and Rooney. For me, you can sprinkle a little bit of other players around that and still get away with coming out on top because you've got that much experience and quality that was always producing on a regular basis. Them lads never had a day off really. They was 8, 9 out of 10 every single week. So the other lads, you could maybe make a case for them maybe not being to the same levels on a regular basis, but because of how good them lads were, for me, I just think that team's going to cause anyone problems.
I totally agree. We got a few lazy players in there, isn't there? A couple of lazy players. Nani can be quite lazy. Anderson could be quite.
But he can also be Nani. As much as he was a little bit lazy, he could also.
Oh, he could be a phenomenal world beater, couldn't he? Yeah.
Produce a moment at any point.
And you got Anderson again, could be lazy, but could pick a pass.
Sometimes as well, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, interesting about that game, right? Joe Hart is a local boy to us here in Shropshire. He's spoken about that volley and on plenty of occasions and how he was flat-footed. He said, and if you look at it closely, Rooney didn't catch it right. It came off his shin, and that was that was the thing that flat-footed him. He said he speaks about that game a lot. I don't know particularly why that one stands out because he had better games. I didn't think he was particularly good in that game, Joe Hart, at all. He's had better games, but if my memory serves me right on that game, we were quite wasteful. We didn't particularly play well in terms of our passing wasn't particularly great, but you're not going to get that because there wasn't that many. Rooney wasn't a real passing player. Giggs at that time became more of a passing player because he got no pace in him already, Phil. And Fletcher was just in there to break up the play. So that team just doesn't have the fluency for me. It's not as fluid as it could be. But yeah, we got the winning. We beat them. I don't know. I still find it hard to make a case.
I want to hear the lads' argument because you have players like Michael Carrick in there who's more of a dictator, but you have players like Darren Fletcher in there who probably man-mark him, and take him out of the game. Julio and Nathan, give me your reasons why your starting 11 would win.
So, Keane, who was the left back in our team again? Sorry,
Ever.
Right. Okay.
That's kind of one of the only similarities there is in.
One thing I will say is there's a comment there about Smalling and Nani being bench players. What people seem to forget about that season in particular, Smalling and Vidic around that time was our main partnership for a good while because Rio was having issues with surgery and injuries. This was just before Rio came back in for the latter part of the season. And this season was Nani's best season to date. This was his most productive season where he was one of our best players. I think, obviously, the argument I have for our team is that for the last year and a half of Sir Alex Ferguson's tenure, Rio and Evans was a very common partnership. There was a good away record we had at the end of the 11-12 season where, we lost the league to City, but we shored up our defence after the 3-3 draw at Chelsea. Rio and Evans was a strong part of that. So even though Vidic and Smalling was quite a good partnership at the time, Rio and Evans was a more solid partnership. I was never convinced by Cleverley, to be honest, but I just think that in the midfield and in attack, there was a lot more to it. You had Ashley Young, who inconsistent at times, and in that game had a goal ruled out anyway, which was unfairly ruled out. Antonio Valencia was one of my favourite players for big games because I just felt like you could always count on him for something, whether it was work rate or just a moment where he would just show some sheer power or pace. I think it was the Liverpool game earlier in the season where he outpaced three Liverpool players to a ball and sped past them and won the penalty at Anfield, which Van Persie put away. Obviously, Van Persie that season, we know what he was all about. Rooney scored twice that day. So I just think that, I don't know, I think, I can't really remember Cleverley much from that game, but I want to say that he offered more legs in that midfield than obviously Carrick would. And I think that's how they complemented each other. But
he was in there to balance Julio. That's all he was in there. But and he's a competent footballer, and he was a good box-to-box player. Correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, but and he was quite tidy, wasn't he, in possession when he was allowed to play. But he offered the balance of that particular 11 for me.
I just feel like there was more going forward in the 12-13 team. I mean, Nate, do you agree with me? Or?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let me just make sure I've got the right game. So that's the game where Rio scored that really weird P roller. Where he hits the ball and it takes about 10 minutes to hit the goal and everyone's going, was that the same game? Yeah. And Van Persie scores.
Yeah, Rooney scored one that rolled along the ground. Yeah.
It just sort of bobbled into the net, didn't it? So Yeah, for me personally, that's probably the last mega team I can resonate with. I was just coming out of college, and no, I was still in college at the time, and I remember this is the only newspaper I ever bought and the back page was the picture of Van Persie and Rio hugging at the end of the game, and Rio's got blood pouring from his face, and Van Persie's screaming because and I go back to my previous point earlier on, going out on your shield, and that I think that was the last game I can really remember. They've absolutely done their absolute best, especially under that Ferguson. I mean, the result I pick out from that season in itself was the last game, obviously the 5-5 against West Brom.
Yeah.
Who was playing at the back? I know Rio was playing. I can't remember if Evans was playing that game as well. I assume he was. But yeah, going forward in that match, in that team itself, I think you just can't look past Van Persie. The boost he gave us that season to go and win us that title. Near enough single-handedly. I mean, you had Carrick slowly coming to the end of his career. And like we said, I think Cleverley was just the man to do the running. And Carrick was the distributor. He had to just stand in one spot and move it around. That's all he really had to do, and he did that brilliantly. I think that was the season everyone was saying, well, he's player of the year, but nobody really talked about it throughout the season because he was such an underrated, valuable player that season. So I think Raphael, again, is one of my all-time favourite right-backs just because I just love him. I just think he's a brilliant little player. He always wanted to score goals. He always wanted to do his best and get up the field. But then he remembered that he was a right-back, so he had to run back and do some defending. But I really like that about him. He always wanted to do his absolute best. And obviously, you can't look past Rio, my all-time favourite centre-back at Manchester, without a doubt. So, yeah, I'm fully behind my team. That's for sure.
What I'm going to do with this is I'm actually going to post this out on the Devil's Advocate Twitter page, and I'm interested that we're going to put out the 11s first on the tweet, and then we're going to put out a poll, and we'll see. But I'll get all the lads to retweet it, and we obviously the other contributors in the channel can chime in with it as well. But it'll be interesting to see whose team comes out on top. Personally, I think you have the quality of the 2013 team of Van Persie and Rooney up top. But I think the experience of the 2011 team, they could kick the shit out of them, and it could be a very interesting game. It could go down to the wire. I personally think it's a draw. Quite honestly, if in that game, I'm gonna be the diplomat here and say I'm gonna say a draw. I'm gonna do a mark on it and see the best in everything. I'm gonna say it's a draw. But look, we leave that out to the viewers, and we'll see what they think who'd win that game. But we're gonna end it on that note. Look, thanks very much to the boys for coming on. It's been a great chat about the game, and look, hopefully we can go out and get the 3 points. I think look, it'd be a great way to kind of bounce back after a lot of stuff happening on the pitch, but also obviously look the sad passing of Sir Bobby as well. I think look, we should do it for him as well, on that as well. But look, on that note, thanks very much to the guys for coming on. Make sure you do like and subscribe as well. Match reaction will be I think 5:30 on Sunday as well, and do check that out as well. And look, we will have a show for the Newcastle game, I do believe Monday as well, or if not Monday, most definitely we'll have it either one of the days. But until then, guys, thanks very much, and we'll see you later.